All right, so let's break this apart a little bit and see, because I hear a lot of people saying we're going to give them a shot. Then I hear a lot of people saying we shouldn't give them a shot. And then you're comparing the populist movement from the left to Donald Trump's populist movement. What would you say? And it's obvious to me, but I want to make it crystal clear to our audience. What would you say would be the fundamental difference between the populist movement from an organization like the Democratic Socialists of America compared to Donald Trump's populist movement?
Yeah, so I mean, our populism is looking to everyone and everything to contribute something, and to build a mass movement that benefits us all, where their mass movement is looking to a very strong leader to do the work for them, which is him. And our work is ordinary people uh, arising as leaders, and then also just everybody contributing what they can to build a broader project that benefits us all and that we have real democratic control over. Whereas his mass movement, his supporters won't have a big say over anything that's going on in the near future. It will just be coming as a directive from him, where we're looking for contributions from everybody.
Okay. So
Environmental
structurally,
justice, reproductive justice.
okay, go ahead.
Uh, Getting back to the labor movement and economic justice,
Hmm.
especially economic justice.
Hmm. So okay,
I mean,
so
yeah, I don't necessarily agree with this like notion of calling what Donald Trump is doing populism. I mean, it is white nationalism. There might be some sort of economic populist, aspect to it, but it is just straight up white nationalism. It's not a populist movement in any sense. It's straight up racism.
so and I think that's what, I don't know. It really kind of puts us in a position where it's so easy for people to label what Donald Trump has going as populism, right? Because he attracts, at least in this election, he attracted a large portion or more he got 16 points from people making underneath $30,000 a year. So automatically they try to tie Donald Trump with populism. But I like what you said there, Emily. Like you reject that idea altogether, that Donald Trump is any type of populist. He's just a white nationalist who's gathering people to himself. Say a little bit more about that and how you would define populism on the left versus this misconception about populism with Donald Trump.
Right. So I think the issue here is that we've sort of set ourselves up for this false equivalency where if people didn't vote for Hillary Clinton, they automatically had to vote for Donald Trump. And in reality, a lot of states that, went Obama in 08 and 12 ended up not going for Hillary Clinton, not because they switched massively to Donald Trump, but because turnout dropped. So I think people are sort of viewing, this election from, a completely incorrect paradigm, when in reality, Donald Trump won among white people. White women, unfortunately, in the majority were for Donald Trump.
Hmm.
But, right wing nationalism has to have an element of economic populism to it because otherwise it loses out on poor white people, right? So, like throughout history, and Matt Karp of Jacobin talks a lot about this in his book. But throughout history, the number one way that, racism has been able to be enforced in a structural nature is by ensuring that poor white people aren't the lowest of the totem pole, right? So,
Mm.
if you're a poor white person in Arkansas, it's okay to be poor and sort of at the bottom of the white totem pole because there will still be black people below you, right? This
Mm.
was the whole basis of the Civil War. It's fine that I'm dirt poor because there's a black dude that's poorer than me.
Yeah.
And so Donald Trump's populism is about raising white people up out of this certain level of poverty, but ensuring that black and brown people stay down. Whereas DSA's socialism is about making sure that everybody, regardless of, what census category you fit into, is brought up, right? The rising tide lifts all boats.
Mm. Did they make you, since the last time you were on the show, Emily, did they make you the official spokesperson of the DSA?
Nah.
Because you've said a mouthful there, right? And you brought in a lot of opportunities for us to have great conversations, like on the fly right here. Because there's this idea about the left, and Larry, I would love to get your input on this too. There's this idea about the left that particularly white left, right, and white socialists, right, that you all are incapable of speaking to the racial component of America's problems, and only want to see a class analysis. But Emily, what you said right there was actually, the first person I heard say it like that was James Baldwin. And he said that he compared it to when he was going to the Western Union, because that was where everyone went back then. He went to the Western Union, and as much money as he was making, there was a poor white lady behind the counter who felt like she had the privilege of looking down on him, because no matter how poor she was, at least she wasn't black. And I love how you just kind of exploded this idea that Trump is about populism, but in reality, it's about white nationalism that gives a sense of pride, not economic uplift. It just gives you a sense of pride that at least I'm better than that black person over there. I would love to hear your take on this fight between the concept of class versus race, race versus class. Do we do one? Do we do both? What's your take? Either one of you, actually both of you. I'd like to hear from both of you on that.
Yeah, it's definitely both, and this goes back to very basic intersectional Marxist analysis that, racism gets its power from capitalism, and capitalists have a lot of power to divide the working class and just even the middle class with racism. If you look at the base that he's lifting up, he's speaking to supposedly people that are facing a lot of problems in their life, but he's not speaking to cities like Newark or cities like Camden. He's speaking to a very specific group of white people. And yeah, I mean, all of these issues are tied together for us. And there's a long history dating back to, if you look at the Black Power movement, a lot of that was rooted in Marxism.
Go ahead, Emily, take a bite of that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the things that is sort of intrinsic to DSA's analysis of race and class is that you can't separate class from race in any meaningful way and have, any sort of viable analysis of the world around you, right? So look at something like that is so near and dear to the Black Lives Matter movement, right? Policing. And so policing Black and brown communities has always been a way to protect white capital, right? If you think about, I suggest everybody look up what happened to Black Wall Street. It was burned down by white people pissed off that Black people had sort of garnered any capital. And it has always been, the issue of policing, Black and brown lives over sort of, or to protect white capital, right? So during Ferguson and all of the corollary protests, it was the issue that white critics had was not like, oh, well, a Black man or a Black woman was shot down in the street in cold blood. It was, oh, well, white people's property is going to get hurt. And that's really sad. Like, it's such a shame that my $30,000 car is getting ruined, even though someone was gunned down in the street in cold blood.
Right.
So as socialists, we see that as, a way to sort of, for capitalists to sort of force this anxiety into white people and then force it into a racial overtone to sort of perpetuate the capitalist and particularly now the neoliberal system.
Oh, there you go. Y'all gonna get tired of this, but I have to clap there. All right, so like real talk. I mean, people, and I did something intentionally. I mean, I put your avatar on the screen so people could see that you're white, right? That you're like legit white. You're not Rachel Dolezal white. You're just white, and you broke down because this is the play that has been played against us so viciously, and it's back already, right? They come up against, it's like we're in the primaries all over again. And they're pounding this narrative after Hillary Clinton and the neoliberal class lost to a fascist. They're pounding this narrative that the real problem isn't that Hillary Clinton lost. The real problem is that white people on the left don't understand the race problem in America. And they do that so that they can control the narrative of race and class. And so they control the narrative of race to the detriment of class. They don't want to have both and. They just want to talk about race without class. But you just said it. It's inseparable. You can't talk about class without talking about race. You can't talk about race without talking about class. I want to come back to that because that's my favorite topic. But I want to double back because some people in my audience might be like, well, Marxism is bad. And I'm reducing it. I'm reducing this down to the very, very core. Why does Ben have socialists on his show? Right, a lot of new people since the election. Sell us on socialism. There you go.
Larry, all you.
um, so for us, even looking at the white working class and Trump and his supporters, for us, a socialist society is one that improves everybody's lives. And when you look at liberals' lives, they're looking at coalitions, but smaller ones. We think that everybody deserves everything and that we should rise up together. And, uh, as one struggles, all of us struggle together.
Mm-hmm.
We think, well, at least I think that, the poorest should come first in our society. And even liberals break with this. If you look at who liberals usually listen to and go to, it's capitalists and the
Mm-hmm.
ruling class. And we don't listen to them. We listen to ordinary people and just democratizing what a community means and working from there.
Well, let me ask some. Let me
We
ask some
think that
questions then.
economic rights are tied to human rights, so
Yep.
everybody deserves education,
Yep.
healthcare, uh, housing, all across the board.
All right. So let me ask some questions that are normally misconceptions about socialism. What would you say is the difference between socialism and communism? And you don't have to give me the textbook difference, but there's this assumption that communism is socialism, communism bad, socialism bad, and therefore democratic socialism is bad. What would you say would be the number one difference between communism, socialism, or communism and democratic socialism, particularly your organization, Democratic Socialists of America?
I think the thing is, a lot of people tend to associate communism with Stalinism. I mean, historically, sort of what we're told was communism, in the USSR was not actually communism. It was Stalinism, right? Which is just this massively authoritarianism, vaguely worker controlled in sort of the most ostensible sense possible. So, what DSA is all about is democratic control, right? So the workers seize the means of production through democratic control and control it through democratic means, right? So every single person has equity of equity of opportunity, but also equity of outcome, right? So you're not going to get people with $400 billion in the bank just chilling because they're not getting taxed. You're going to get people who basically, right, like communism and Stalinism is this massively authoritarian regime in which people are oppressed massively for the good of a minor elite, which honestly sounds a lot like capitalism, I know, but DSA is working towards equity of opportunity and equity of outcome.
Okay. All right.
And I think our organization is decentralized, so we're not listening to, we have a national political committee, but we're not listening to them and we're not taking party lines based on what they do. It's more our chapters do whatever they want, and then we work from there. And starting as local as possible and working around our communities to make decisions rather than having a very, centralized line where we're listening to a party organ. We get to do whatever the hell we want.
And within some, obviously, like within a framework that the organization has set, right? Like you have goals. You're not just out there doing anything. You're moving towards a
I mean,
purpose.
So there's a theory called social movement unionism, and it's from Jane McAlevey. She has a great book on it. Basically, how we function is tying ourselves into social movements, but also working in a broader context that single issue movements aren't enough. Like wins are wins, but they're not the win that we want, which is a sliding scale towards socialism. So us tying in ourselves as wherever we work in real life and tying that into a broader framework of class struggle inside our work life and then our community life to organize both ways to eventually get to socialism.
What would you say? I want to make it as plain as we can for as many people as we can. Many people became familiar with democratic socialism but because of Bernie Sanders, right? It got on a national stage for the first time in a very long time because of Sanders. How would you define what's different between your organization, what you fight for, and what Bernie Sanders fights for?
I mean, there's people in our organization that are fighting for what he's fighting for, and if we can get to what he's fighting for, that'd be great. We're really far away from that.
Yeah.
So if we could even hit what he's looking for, that would be tremendous. But then there's also people that would like to go further than him, and we're just working together to. Man, if we could reach the bare minimum of the social welfare state that he's talking about, that would be amazing, but
Right.
we're not even close to there. And now that we're fighting the right the way we are, things could slip back 30 or 40 years, and then we'll be working from there rather than where we are right now.
Yeah. I mean, because if people, I think one thing that would help. So we're in a weird place, Emily, and Larry. We're in this weird place where we're actually normalizing white nationalism in the freaking White House right now. We're normalizing that, yet somehow socialism, even though we have a rich American history full of socialism, somehow that's the boogeyman, right? Socialists, fascist, Maoist, Lenin. They all, how they run them off just as one long ad hominem. But they're normalizing white supremacy and white nationalism. I think what would help socialists would be to help normalize the conversation of the welfare state or the safety net state or basic income or single payer. Just normalize those concepts and normalize the word of socialism, which is why I'm wanted to have you both of you on, because Democratic Socialists of America, how you're it's almost like a rebirth. It's growing. It's no longer taboo. And it's amazing that it became taboo in the first place, almost as a concerted effort, not almost, exactly because of a concerted effort from the right to vilify the welfare state and make it seem as though it was somehow connected to the USSR and and totalitarianism or authoritarianism, right? They wanted to vilify the welfare state so that they can privatize everything and vilify the public good. So how do we? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go for it.
No. So I think the thing that's really important is that we're looking at sort of, this isn't an American centric moment right now. And obviously, in a very visceral way it is, because we have just elected a white nationalist. But I think sort of if we step back a little bit, this is an international moment. And, just as sort of the left is having a renaissance in America, it's also having quite a renaissance in the UK where I live right now. And, we have these amazing figures like Jeremy Corbyn and Angela Rayner and John McDonnell, who are really sort of helping to drive this left renaissance over here. And, I think we're very lucky and very privileged to have the internet as we have it, because we can sort of, I know DSA is going to be able to draw on the strengths of Momentum, which is, the Labour Party sort of DSA group here in the UK and in England mostly. And, we can look to Momentum as well. And Momentum, which I'm part of here, can look to DSA. And I think we sort of get this like global solidarity for fighting back against fascism, which was absolutely not something that we were privy to before. It was either we were fighting fascism in a Cold War or you were fighting it alone.
And I think for us, fighting in a global economy and having comrades like Momentum and also in Germany and other countries, this is a fight not only against the rising right, but against capitalism at the same time. We can do both at the same time. The stock market after Trump one reached its record high. So, the ruling class and capitalists have no problem with a little bit of fascism, and liberals always want to have it both ways with, coddling the ruling class, but at the same time, they'll bend the other knee and just, you look at the global market, they had no problem with where things went afterwards. So, we can fight these fights at the same time. And if you look at Momentum and other groups working in solidarity with us, we can strike a blow to both fascism and capitalism at the same time.
All right. So many things I want to talk to you guys about, to the two of you about, but I am out of time. I want to thank you both, Larry, Emily. Thank you so much for coming on. I want you to give just maybe like 15 seconds of a closing word, and then tell everyone how to get up with you. Let's go with Larry first, and then Emily, I want you to close it out for us.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a little bit more than 15 seconds.
I gave you
but,
15 seconds. See, that's white people, man. White people, you give white people an inch, and they no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I need to get up on my soapbox for a quick second.
Go for it. You got 30 seconds.
So yeah,
go ahead.
DSA, this is a historical moment for us, and things are moving really fast. This is the biggest uptick a socialist movement has seen, maybe in 30 or 40 years. And we're on the verge of reaching 10,000 members.
Wow.
We're a couple hundred away. And if we can get 10,000 members, contact a friend, contact somebody else, we can go from 10 to 20 and hopefully, start to really mushroom the way that other socialist fronts have in the past, so we can fight fascism and capitalism at the same time. I'm just going to plug DSAUSA.org. You can find the join page on there.
I'm gonna mess with you, Larry. Let's mess up the whole. We had a good time. Now I'm about to mess up everything. I'm about to really. You may not ever come back on my show. What percentage of your membership is black? Do you know what percentage of your membership of the 10,000
is black?
Is black. Yeah.
That's a really good question. I don't think we really have a good number. What we're really trying to do is tie chapters. I'm working on a chapter in Camden and a chapter in Newark, so we can have a real multiracial coalition underneath a really socialist front that can fight back. But yeah, we're historically a predominantly older white organization, but this is America, and we're a very white nation, so we're trying our best to be a multiracial coalition, and I hope our struggle can be the struggle of all communities.
And to be sure, like the last time we spoke, you made it clear that DSA is not a political party. It's a political organization, organizing organization, right? You organize around particular issues.
We're an organizing committee, but we're not ruling out being a political party. Actually, in Philly, we have a couple hundred members, and they're looking to run a pretty famous, I can't say his name, we'll announce it at some time, but he's a pretty famous Black community organizer in Philly, and that will be our, we'll have socialist ballot lines under DSA's name, and that will be the first race we ever have. Okay.
All right. So just my 2 cents, like I'm not a part of the organization. I'm like an organization agnostic. I don't really join anything. Not that I don't believe in anything. I just don't join anything. I just try to expose everybody to everything. But my 2 cents would be to hit up the barbershops, hit up the communities, go by some churches, because there's a rich socialist history in the Christian church. And if you understand, if you take Emily with you and let Emily talk about the connection between capitalism and racism, and I promise you, your Black membership will quadruple from whatever it is right now. And I honestly know that's what we need to push back against the neoliberal branch of the African-American community that masterfully uses race to the detriment of class. Emily, you can take as much time as you want, since Larry went right past my 30 seconds. Go ahead.
No, I'll just make it quick. So I'll just, sort of leave off with my man, John McDonnell, who's the shadow chancellor of the Labour Party. And since I'm in Scotland right now and Scottish Labour is in dire straits, we look to English/National Labour for our hope. But John McDonnell was speaking at the World Transformed, which was sort of like a fringe event to Labour conference this year. And he spoke of a society, that's radically fair, more equal, and more justified, which I think were his words exactly. And he sort of ended it off by saying, and in this party, you no longer have to whisper that's called socialism. And I think that is exactly where we need to be, right? Yep. We're fighting for a world that is radically fair, more equal, and more justified. That is socialism.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks so much to the two of you for joining me. It's always a pleasure having the both of you. Emily and Larry, you too. Larry, but Emily, they need to put you as a spokesperson for that intersection of class and race, because I can shout it as long as I want to, but until we have allies who can succinctly communicate the intersection between class and race and how they're inseparable, The neoliberal class will always be able to use identity politics against a class-based movement. And if above anything else, I think the three of us know, if anything we need some economic populism in America. Thanks so much for joining me. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
It was, Ben.
Take care. 857-600-0518. If you want to join the conversation, it's always good talking to them. And I like Larry. Me and Larry hung out at in Philly for the DNC. Cool guy. I haven't met Emily, but I think Emily is like 18, 19, and sharp as a tack on these issues. And that's one thing I'm really impressed by in general, is like the younger millennials, they've got this thing figured out. The rest of us old heads, we're still trying to figure it out, and they've got it figured out.